Okay, now it's recording?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right. Take two. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is you're watching from. Welcome to the Peasant Party podcast.
Woo.
Woo! Coming to you live from Pouch Stick Studios in Austin, Texas. And here to my left is my friend Owen Moore, who will be my guest today. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Charlotte. My name's Owen Moore. I live out in Arlington, Virginia, and I currently run my own dating TikTok page, Dating with Owen. So just talking a lot of single life, my dislike of the dating apps, and just really wanting to see better for people across the dating marketplace, as some might say.
Awesome. And when did you start making dating content?
I would say probably summer 2021, really heading into the fall. Just was really bored one day and was like, why not give it a shot? And it really just took off from there.
Awesome. Love to hear it. And yeah, I know you talk a lot about what dating is like in the DMV area or Washington, D.C.
Yep.
Do you want to give like a rundown of what that's like? Because I've heard it's very unique dating in that city.
Yeah, it's definitely, really unique. It's definitely survival of the fittest, as some might call it, because it's a really career-driven city. People are really driven and go-getters. So you'll hear of the people who are essentially going on dating apps to like network, or if a relationship ends, they'll be like, hey, I know things didn't work out, but I've been looking at roles in your company, like, what's up, what can we do? So it's definitely quite the experience, and it's really transient. So a lot of people are coming and going and just really afraid to commit because they work all the time.
That makes sense. Do you ever have people where they have like a classified job, or like they have an elusive job they can't talk about?
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely, gone out on dates with people who work in like skips or work in facilities where they cannot carry their phone, not even an Apple Watch, for 8 to 10 hours a day. So it's kind of hard to plan things spontaneously if you can't really communicate. So
damn,
it's interesting.
I wonder if those people get accused of like ghosting ever or anything like that, or if it's affected their dating life in that way.
I mean, I guess it probably could impact it depending on like communication styles. Some people like the more constant communication and feedback, but if people are really kind of upfront and like, hey, this is my situation, I'm sure most people would probably like understand.
That makes sense.
And they're not going to be gone for like 24 hours a day. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah, like I feel like Austin is like, you don't really see like people in like the classified type jobs, but definitely you see some, a lot of tech, a lot of like creatives or people who, have, kind of a creative side gig, whether they're like in a band, they have a podcast. You see a lot of that here, with like South by Southwest and all the events and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine like everybody here is working for like a tech company or like a startup, and in DC it's a lot different. So it's definitely an interesting change of pace.
Yeah. So, you've been committing a crime while you've been here.
What is that?
A little something called hood fishing.
Hood fishing.
That's when you head on the dating apps for a city you don't live in, and you go in and swipe. I do think the line for hood fishing is you don't really reveal where you live because people might not be into it. But how has that gone? Like how's the response been? Have you had to like update your profile at all to show that you're visiting?
I mean, initially I had just gotten bored and I was like, you know what, let me change it. Like, let me see what it's kind of like in Austin. Like, let me just try it like on Hinge. And I was really upfront and really honest with people once we had matched. But, I thought to myself, that's not really fair to them because they're agreeing to the match on the premise that they're probably expecting me to be local. So I put that in my bio. So now people are able to see, hey, I'm only in town for like a week. I'm here for a couple of days. And then from there, they can make that decision because ultimately, like, it's fair to them to not waste their time, to be upfront and be honest and allow them to make that decision for themselves and go from there.
Totally. And would you give that advice to, any guy who comes to another city, whether it's for work or bachelor party, maybe they're there an extra day, want to meet women? Like, what would you tell them to do? Or would it be something in their bio, a prompt, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely might like impact the maybe volume, let's say, of matches, but ultimately, depending on what you're looking for, you're better off being honest and upfront because more people probably will be in agreement with that as well. And if you kind of have to like lie or kind of like go through a ruse in order to get that match, it's probably not like the type of partner they would probably even want in the first place. So it's kind of like, yeah, put it in your bio, like, hey, visiting for X amount of days or whatever, or just be very upfront, be honest from the beginning and just play your luck.
Totally. And have you noticed any differences between like the aesthetic or types of women you're seeing here versus like DC?
Yeah, there's definitely a much larger Latin American influence, especially here for sure. I mean, I get it. It's Texas, so in DC, you're usually getting, brown hair, like blonde hair, white women, black women. I mean, there's definitely some cultural diversity for sure, but seeing like an extreme amount of like Latin American women compared to like in DC, it's definitely been like a change of pace for sure. I'm like, oh, okay. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, no, totally. So. And definitely, I know there's a lot of like prompts too that reflect like interest in like Tex-Mex food. Like what I order for the table seems to be on everybody's Hinge prompt list, and it's always chips and guac, queso, tequila, stuff like that.
I've definitely noticed that for sure. I've had people hit me up. It's kind of like in DC, like where you go to brunch might be like the barometer for how people like kind of judge you, or like what do you do. But I've had people ask me, oh, where do you go to get tacos? And then I have to be like, well, I don't live here, so nowhere. And they're like, oh, well, I'll show you around. And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Nice. And when you're in DC, do you ever come across kind of the reverse situation, like women who are visiting and list that within their profile? Does that have any effect on whether or not you swipe on them?
I actually, believe it or not, on Hinge, I've had it happen maybe 3 or 4 times, especially people, because there's a lot of like nonprofits, NGOs, obviously federal workers who are coming from like all over. If they have to do a case or whatever in DC, they'll like swipe. And I've had matches with people, and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm actually leaving town tomorrow. And I'm like, dog, like tell people from the beginning, which is what I was essentially, advocating for. And I've had a lot of it, though, more on Bumble. Yeah. Because people can do the travel mode or something, and they'll be like, travel mode in DC. And then you look at the location, and it'll be like Texas or some shit. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I feel like it's a little more acceptable on like Tinder, Bumble, because it like goes through the geo mapping versus Hinge. Yeah. It's kind of like intentional, where it almost implies that you live there, which can be kind of like, I don't know, kind of annoying, I think.
For sure. Like I know on Hinge you can like move down the little like toggle arrow thing and like just keep scrolling, and then you can like really put it to an exact location, and it'll be like Owen, East Austin or whatever, and then that's it. Like there's no like inclination to give anybody the awareness that Owen does not actually live in East Austin, but at least Bumble kind of gives you like an idea.
Totally. And I know, we're talking about dating apps, but I know you've definitely had a memo just throughout your content about maybe some disdain for dating apps. I think they're kind of I think a lot of people describe them as a necessary evil in a way. Like there's no one that's just like, I love the dating apps. But I wanted to kind of ask a little bit more about that. If you've had periods of time where you've deleted the dating apps or made them less of a priority, like what are ways that you've kind of gone out in the world and met people, or what would you recommend to other people, like millennials, men, women, hoping to move away from the dating apps to meet people?
Yeah, I've definitely had those periods in my life where I'm like, oh my God, I'm sick and tired of it. It's kind of like rinse, repeat. You're doing the same thing over and over again. So I've definitely had the periods where I've like deleted them or really just de-emphasized them, and kind of like and really wanted to emphasize like dating in the wild, or just letting things happen naturally as they unfold, like wherever you are. And I understand like dating apps are like a necessary evil, as you mentioned, in today's world, and they allow you to have, I guess, more variety and more options than ever before. So like I get it, but I feel like a lot of times people look at the dating apps as like a game they're trying to win, and they're like, all right, let me get as many matches, as many connections, as many messages, and it's kind of like I get to like have dealer's choice from there. But that's when like stuff like the paradox of choice like kicks in.
I could not agree more. So let's say it's like it's a Saturday afternoon, and you want to go out in the world and meet people. Maybe get somebody's number, like have a fun time. What does that Saturday look like? Who do you wrangle together? Where do you go? Do you have a kind of I don't want to say strategy, but a move that you like to do or anything like that?
In terms of like finding like a date to go out on like a Saturday night.
Or when like going out on a Saturday, trying to meet new people while you're out and about. What do you think is like the best way to do that?
Honestly, I think the best way to do that is really, getting on the apps, kind of like messaging people, hey, like, what are you up to? Obviously, assuming you had some type of communication like prior to, because if you haven't like met somebody, or if you only exchanged 2 messages and they're like, hey, what you doing tonight? Come out. They might be a little bit like, well, like, let me go through like the vetting process like first. And then I guess maybe they'll feel more comfortable down the line. But ultimately, if you have that rapport, just reach out to people, give it a shot, and just see what happens. You know, the only way you'll find out is if you try, and if they say no, you know, respect it and just move on.
That makes sense. Yeah, I've always thought the you know, saying rather than do you want to go to this thing with me, having the message of, hey, I'll be out here with some friends.
Yeah.
If you want to come by, bring some girlfriends or something like that. Like I've always found that like it doesn't feel creepy. It always feels like, you know, the guy has a life outside of you. Like he's not desperate or anything. It's just like, oh yeah, come swing by. And I've definitely seen you know, situations like work out like that where a friend says, oh, I want to go. Let's go over and meet this guy. He's at the bar next door, and then we pop over. He's got a group of friends, and it's like a fun experience.
Yeah, definitely a win-win for everybody. A lot of it is really kind of like how the delivery goes and how you kind of like present the idea. But most people, I guess, if it's not like too aggressive or anything like that, might be cool with it.
Totally. Yeah. I guess to pivot to the next point, do you have a dating hot take right now that you would like to chat through? Anything like your followers have asked about, or a theme that keeps coming up that's kind of grinding your gears, anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely think that one of, I guess, my biggest or hottest like dating takes today is you know, with these like Facebook groups, like, are we dating the same dude, or is that my boyfriend, or whatever the hell they're called. And I guess some guys are kind of like hitting back with the revenge groups, like, are we dating the same girl, and vice versa. I kind of think those groups are kind of part of the reason why like a lot of people are so jaded by dating today, and it's essentially kind of like poison to the brain. And I think these ideas and these groups started off like really well, like meaning because, you know, women want to be safe and women want to be protected. They don't want to be going out serial rapists and murderers and things of that nature. But a lot of it has turned into kind of like the girls' room, or like the inside of the locker room. I mean, the inside of like the bathroom stall, like in the middle school, like, you know, burn book type thing. And now like guys are doing it, but it's not even like, oh, to protect people from abusive women. It's more like, oh, well, like, let's throw dirt on her name because they're throwing dirt on our name in the group, and it's just like fire fighting fire. Like it doesn't really work.
Oh, I hate the there's like some in dating discussions now, it's just like there's this big gender war all of a sudden. Like just and you probably know, like, if as you make content, there's all of the you know, like, men have it harder, women have it harder. No, the women are the evil ones, the men are the evil ones, and it's ridiculous. I think it's pretty exhausting. Just I know you make really positive content. I try to do the same, and just every now and then, just someone comes out of left field and turns it into a gendered issue. It is the absolute worst.
I know for sure. I definitely try to keep it as middle of the pack or middle of the road as I possibly can. And exclusively, I do try to avoid using like gender terms and just speak in general. But of course, obviously, as a man, like, most people are going to, you know, curtail my content as men speaking on women, vice versa, whatever. And there's always like one person, and then she uses all your money, or they call it like a simping and things of that nature. And it's kind of like, you can treat somebody well and treat people cool, be cool with them, and not be like a simp. And you can also like understand that, like, are all women gold diggers? Absolutely the fuck not. Are all dudes abusive, misogynist, who hate women and want them to essentially be their slaves? Absolutely not. There's definitely, you know, middle ground and nuance in every situation. And, you know, all men aren't bad, all women aren't bad. And the us versus them rhetoric really just doesn't do good for anybody, and it's just not helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like with those two, it's like the crazies speak the loudest. Like, as you probably know, like, as you go through TikTok, social media, what gets the likes, what gets the shares, it's the crazy stories.
Absolutely.
You know, just being someone who sees like dating content, like, as I swipe through, like, I'll see, you know, a girl doing a get ready with me for a date, and it has 20 likes, like, oh, hey, here's my outfit, I'm so excited for my date, wholesome, nice girl. And then I swipe again, and it's the story about the cheese girl, if you remember that one.
The burger one,
The burger, oh my gosh, that girl, like, so it's like, those are the ones that blow up, and then of course it's like, look at all this bad behavior, and then someone with an agenda will stitch it and say, look at what all the women are doing. Meanwhile, there's, you know, good, wholesome people that are, you know, enjoying their dating life, going through it kindly, who, you know, by TikTok terms, it's a boring content piece. So it's just, it's crazy how like social media just blows that up, and it amplifies the strangest voices.
Yeah, a lot of it too is like almost like a buffet for like the confirmation bias like folks out there, because like you said, they'll like scroll past or swipe past all the positive or maybe less controversial or even boring content, and the minute they see like a woman taking advantage of like a man allegedly, or vice versa, they're like, pow, this is the issue, this is why dating sucks today, like, let's gang up and let's, you know, get them, and vice versa. And it's kind of like, you literally ignored like 9 other videos that were like completely contrary to that. But okay.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like there's clout to be gained from sharing the crazy stories. So I wonder how many of these like crazy dating stories are real. And then second of all, like, yeah, there's clout to be gained from telling a crazy story. Like, do you recall like the West Elm Caleb incident when that happened?
100%.
Yeah, like the girl who was the spearheader of it. I don't even know what to call her.
The ringleader, I guess.
The ringleader of West Elm Caleb.
The captain.
Was able to use that to basically make influencing her full-time job. Like she does not have her job now is full-time influencing because of that West Elm Caleb incident. And so of course like people might see that and think, like maybe we could make some stories here. And I think there's probably some, if you're either making up stories or there might be some self-sabotage, like people going out there dating for content, or trying to basically self-sabotaging their own dating experience, dating for the story, choosing people that might make a better story, and then all of a sudden like it causes a lot of kerfuffles in that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I feel like clout is kind of like one of the like most poisonous and dangerous kind of drugs like inflicting our society today, because people no longer want to do things because they makes them happy. They're more like, okay, like how can I kind of like monetize this, or how can I kind of like capitalize on it? And situations that might be hey, I didn't really have a great time on the date. I don't want to pursue this further. Like easy text message, move on, is now a 5-minute video or 3-minute video airing out all the dirty laundry. And of course in the comments it's like spill the tea, because it's like the people don't even care about what actually happened. They're just looking for like their anarchy and like their entertainment essentially, and people are like yes, more and more, and just around and around we go.
Exactly. And that kind of brings me to something else I want to talk about. Dating stories being entertainment. Before I got of all my friends, I was definitely of my friends from home. I was for a while the last single person. Recently got into a relationship, but one thing that bugged me was how I felt like my dating life was used as entertainment.
Absolutely.
It was always would go home for Christmas. Who are you dating? Can I see Tinder? Can I play Tinder? They would say, can I play Tinder? And I'd be like, I'm not even on Tinder. How do you feel about that? Like people in relationships, like kind of looking to single people for entertainment, or kind of having kind of that feeling at all?
Yeah, I kind of look at it at this point for a lot of like my friends who are in relationships. Whenever they ask me questions or say things like that, I kind of just say, dating is dating. Like I'm still single, and kind of like leave it at that, because for them it's kind of like they almost like revel in like the stories about how like awful maybe some dates are, some dating platforms and things of that nature, and then they can go back home and be like, thank God that's not me. And it's kind of like, well, it is me. So it's like my life isn't like content or fodder for you to tell like your other friends, like, oh, like my one single friend told me. So now I just keep it close to the vest, because ultimately like people just want like to make sure that at least it's not happening to them. So to them, they're kind of like, shoulder shrug, like, but like, no, like this is still like my life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Have you ever been on the receiving end of a setup that you felt was not in your best interest from a friend? Like they got more out of the setup from you in terms of like, someone they set you up on a date with?
No, I've actually never been set up by any friends, so I can't say so. Yeah, no, never.
Oh, no way. Because I've had that experience where it's like, friend has a boyfriend, and I get where the sentiment is. Like, friend has a significant other that she's crazy about. He has a best friend that's single or something like that, and permanent double dates. Like, if everything works out, it's like you raise your kids next to each other. But I have been on some kind of awkward setup dates and whatnot, and like I don't know, like definitely,
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, wait, why is no one ever like referred me on a date like this? Like, I don't know, maybe I need to do some like stuff reflecting here, but no, I've never had it happen. I've definitely played matchmaker for a couple of my other friends. No one's been married yet, so I'm 0 for, I don't know, maybe 0 for 3, give or take. But it's definitely fun to try to connect two people who you think would really get along and just see how it goes.
Totally. And of the people you matched, you kind of set up, how did you go about doing that? Like, who came to who first?
Most of them have been like really spontaneous, like in terms of me, let's say, going out to happy hour with one friend and the other friend just happens to be there. And then, they'll talk about like, oh, like being single kind of sucks, or like dating's like rough, X, Y, and Z. And then I'll be like, oh, like how old are you? Get some like basic information. Then I'm kind of like filing in my head. I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, well, I have somebody who great character, great morals, everything, own job, clean, very tidy, things of that nature. Like, would you be interested? And they said, yeah. They'll usually say yes, or like, what do they look like? I show them the picture, and then from there, if they're interested, I say, all right, well, I'm gonna ask him if he's okay with it, and send them like the information, have them, you know, contact each other and see what happens.
Nice. And what's usually like their first meeting? Is it like a date? Is it like you go to the same party or something like that, or?
From the situations at least I've been involved in, they've been coffee, like breakfast dates, getting like a little bagel and like a, you know, Starbucks or something, and yeah.
Nice. Have you ever had a time where it was someone you were trying to set up and one person was interested and the other wasn't?
No, actually, I haven't yet. I mean, granted, like I said, I've only done this like 2 or 3 times, so my sample size is very small. But no, I haven't had that happen yet. But I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
It happens, yeah. Like I've been on one side of that, and it's always interesting. Like, how do you break the news if you do at all? Like, how do you say it to a friend? You get kind of trapped in being the middleman and all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy ever, and sometimes, you know, you got to be the bearer of the bad news. But you know, life goes on.
Exactly. So I have a hotly debated topic I want to kind of go through with you.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, and I feel like this is just one that people kind of are going back and forth on. You know, a heterosexual couple or man, woman are going on a date. They're going on their first date.
Yep.
A lot of women like for the man to pay for the first date. It's just,
boy.
Yeah. I mean, we're modern times, but a lot of women do prefer that.
Absolutely.
However, you know, a lot of women too, when the check comes, even though they prefer that the guy pay for the first date, they still like to offer to pay, or pay their half, or do what I would call the purse pump fake. They see their purse there, they start rifling around through it. Even though they don't want to pay, and they would be turned off, if not, it would be a deal breaker if the guy accepted the offer. How do you feel about the purse pump fake move? Do you think it is playing games to do that? Do you prefer if a woman, you know, does do that? Do you like the gesture? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
You know, this is one of those like situations where it's kind of like what I'm going to say might sound like contradictory in a way, but like, I don't know. I feel like if there's a fellow people out there who agreed, it might like make sense to them. For me, I'm not a fan of the purse pump fake. To me, it's kind of like, you know, you don't really intend to pay. Like, what are you truly doing? And if you're actually doing that to test somebody, it's kind of like you are like playing games. And I do know for a fact, like I've been on dates where like the woman has actually insisted like, hey, like I feel most comfortable paying for myself, because I've been on situations maybe with other guys who would assume because they paid that they were obligated to actions or activities with me, or they felt that like I was using them if I didn't agree to a second date. So just to avoid any trouble or confusion, I'll pay for myself. And of course, you know, there's definitely situations where, you know, women will offer to pay if they don't envision seeing that guy again. And they're like, you know what, my conscience is clear. Like, I don't owe them anything, you know, clean cut, like keep moving. And of course, like you mentioned, the people who will offer to pay and see what they do, and then from there it's kind of like, all right, well, they let me pay, so like now I'm not going on another date with them. And it's kind of like, come on now, like let's be serious.
Exactly. And I do think there's a lot of mixed messages out there for guys too, like nowadays, like who did you get your dating advice from 20 years ago? Your older brother, like your friends. Now it's like you scroll through TikTok and you hear all these messages of like, I want him to pay, no I don't, if I get out my wallet, it means I want to pay because I don't like you. And so I could totally see how it would cause confusion, where it's like, oh, you know, does she really want to pay? My personal hot take on this, and because usually it's like, I get it. My personal feelings on it, and this is probably just how I was raised, but when I was a little kid, you'd go to the movies with your friends or something, or you'd go to, you know, the water park, and their mom would drive you. And my mom would always say, here's $20 to cover your admission to the water park, the movies, whatever, give this to so-and-so's mom. Yeah. And I would try to do that and, you know, say, here's my money. And the mom would always say, no, sweetie, it's okay. Like, I've got it. And every time that would happen, my mom would say, they're probably not going to take it, but I want you to offer. And of course, the friend's mom would always be like, but you're so sweet for offering. So at a young age, there was sort of that reward for offering, even though you didn't expect someone to take it. And so when I started like dating as I was older, I just felt like it made me seem like a spoiled brat to not at least offer, even though I didn't mean it. So the goal was never to play games. It was always just like sitting there while someone's getting the check. Like, you know, I felt weird not doing it. But I could totally see how it's like it's seen as like a game and whatnot.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I feel like for a lot of people too, it's like the kind of the thought or like the offer, assuming obviously it's genuine, that counts. And I'm like a big believer. It's kind of like do not offer things that you're not like willing to do. So it's like don't offer to pay if you're not actually intending to pay ever, because that's kind of like you're kind of like almost. It's like almost entrapment in a way, because you're like giving this person a situation, a scenario, and then when they, I guess, do whatever, then you're like, got you, and it's kind of like, come on now. Exactly. And I'm a big believer, like I will offer to pay. I don't hesitate to pay. I'm not even an issue. But a lot of people, like I've said, if they say, hey, I feel more comfortable paying, or they insist on paying, things of that nature, I'm not going to sit here and like fight them. Like, no, you cannot pay. Like, no, I mean, if they feel most comfortable there, I pay either way. I don't anticipate any obligation on their behalf or anything of that nature, and just move about my business because like I agreed to go on a date, so why not?
Totally. No, I agree with that. And I also think like if you offer to pay and they accept it, you don't get to say, oops, I didn't actually mean it. Like you do, if they accept it, you pay. But yeah, like I think some women like maybe have the feelings of like, oh, it means he didn't actually like me. It's such a confusing song and dance that it's awkward to talk about, like, cause it's someone you barely know and money, and it's just interesting that way.
Yeah. I think that's part of, I guess the thing that plays into the whole go on like cheap first date things, especially when you're just really trying to build that rapport and get to know somebody. Because if you go on a dinner date with somebody and it's like $140 and you don't even really know them that well, and the date like goes horribly, and then that just creates more conflict versus like a $10 or $15 like quick coffee and a bagel or whatever, some fruit juice or something, I don't know, and then it's like, all right, $15, like cool, let's just go.
Exactly. And you're bringing me into my next topic, which is, and I call them the big three types of first dates: the dinner date, the drink date, or the coffee date for a first date.
Yeah.
Do you, I have strong feelings about the dinner date, and I have a preference of those three on my end. But I wanted to know how you feel about those three date types as a first date, and which you prefer, and what style of it do you go for?
So I personally am a really big fan of anything that involves food, even if it's like grabbing lunch or even some drinks and like maybe some like hors d'oeuvres or whatever, some apps. I'm cool with that. But for me to go like to a strict like coffee date, I'm kind of always like, because I don't actually drink coffee. So like I understand and like I see the value in it, even if it's just like a chat in the park or whatever, just, whatever. Like I get why people like it, and I've done them, but personally I don't like pick them myself because like I just love like food, and anything that can get me some food or maybe a beer or glass of wine or something, I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Totally. I've always felt like coffee, maybe it's just, working in tech, having to work remote sometimes, it just felt too much like a business meeting. The last time I met somebody for coffee, it was my realtor to buy my house. And that would be hard for me, but I also at the same time work 9 to 5. So it was, I was never a fan of like the coffee date, but I know people who maybe have irregular schedules. Like if you're a night nurse, maybe coffee dates are ideal.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those like different strokes for different folks type things, and I think people just be like upfront and honest in terms of what they're looking for, and in terms of what works for them in terms of a first date, communicate, and if the person and you don't align on those views, then somebody else will.
Totally. And so you mentioned like light bites and drinks and things like that. So it sounds like not like the full-blown dinner date, like sit down dinner type thing with a server, but what kind of like experience do you like in terms of like those foodie experiences or drinks in terms of like first dates?
I'm a really big fan for sure going to like different like tapas style restaurants, because then you get to talk and get an idea of what kind of foods they like to eat, what kind of foods do you like to eat, and you get to try like little bites and many different things, so it gives you like a more interactive experience versus like sitting there and reading through like a 4-page like pamphlet and you're like scrolling and then you pick like the $40 entree. They pick the $40 entree, and you're like off the rip before you guys even know if you even like each other. You're at 80 right then and there. So like the date can go well or it can go bad, and then the person will be like, "Damn, I spent $180. I spent whatever," and now like they didn't agree to the second day, and now they're like all angry and they're all pissed, and it's kind of like just remove some of that pressure. So usually that kind of eases things a little bit, but obviously it's never gonna be perfect.
Totally. And there's some dates people walk into where within the first 10 minutes that this person is not it. You could be talking to them on a dating app for, I don't know, like 2 weeks, and things will seem great, and just something about the in-person presence. Like, have you ever had that happen? Like 5-10 minutes in?
100%, 100%. Because a lot of people, it's kind of like the conundrum.
Yeah.
Because they'll be dynamic on the dating app, so funny, so witty, so energetic and lively. And in person, it's just like maybe the vibe's just not there. Or some people, it's just like the chemistry is just not the same and vice versa. And I've definitely had that happen. And, you know, just kind of like got to see it through the best you can. And of course, you know, just probably not ask them out again. And that kind of brings up the whole like, oh, well, if you don't reach out after the date, is it like ghosting? But if they don't reach out to you and you don't really reach out to them, it's kind of unfair to say, oh, this person ghosted me because you didn't reach out either. Now, if you're reaching out and communicating and all of a sudden cold turkey one day to like peace, then okay, you've got some, you know, you got some weight there. But if you go on a date, you know, you don't feel it either and they don't feel it, they don't reach out and vice versa, like you can't really see they ghosted you.
Exactly. That is a clear cut and dry fizzle. That is, you know, two people go on a date, they're not interested in each other, they don't text each other. I don't think I don't like the idea of like a proactive rejection text to somebody.
Yeah,
so I think it's weird. I think it puts things at a net negative, and maybe it's just a me ego thing, but I feel like it almost like sends the message of, oh, this person's just sitting by the phone waiting for me to call them, versus like, you know, they might not have liked you either, kind of thing. So I was never a fan of that. Unless somebody, you know, asked me on another date, it would be like, okay, hey, like I'll kind of share, you know, don't see this as something that could materialize. Yeah. Do you think it's okay to cut a date short if you're not attracted to the person?
Honestly, yeah. I definitely think it's important to, you know, be comfortable and everything on a date. And if you're like obviously very uncomfortable and you really don't actively want to be there, it's probably going to do more harm than good for you to continue to like be in that date, because eventually people will pick up on like your energy and your just vibe and things of that nature. So honestly, it's kind of like, it's all about kind of how you go about it. But if you're really truly not feeling a date and this is one of those I need to go type situations, I mean, ultimately you kind of have to do that.
Totally. Have you ever done that, or has that ever happened to you?
I've never done it personally. I've had dates that I've wanted to end earlier than probably like the earmarked time I went into the date with, just because of like different like time constraints, or maybe I wasn't really feeling them that much, or vice versa. I can kind of sense it wasn't going anywhere, but it hasn't been like we ended it after 30 minutes or something like that, or after 15 minutes. It's more been like, all right, we've been here for a little bit over an hour, you know, you kind of get the idea, like it's not going to really go anywhere, and then you kind of just like end it from there, and it's, you just go about your business. But I've never had the ending one abruptly. But I did have one person, we were talking on the apps for like 3 weeks, had FaceTime multiple times and everything, and met up. And she had, I think it was one of those like, oh, call me after an hour, and like based on like whatever they say, like I guess the friend will either stop calling or whatever. And her friend had a flat tire. And she got the phone call. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I need to help my friend with the flat tire. And I was kind of just like, okay. So then I was like, hey, like I have AAA, like is there anything I can do to help? Like I'll like go help you if need be. And she was kind of like, oh, no, it's fine, like we'll figure it out. And once I heard that answer, I was kind of like, okay.
The flat tire.
Yeah, I was like, all right. Like once I offered to like go assist, I was like, I have AAA, like I do have some experience like changing tires, I can help you if need be. And she gave me that, oh, we'll figure it out, like I want to be there to support her. I was just like, all right, no worries, left it alone, and we literally never spoke again.
Never spoke again.
Never.
Oh goodness. Have you ever what is the, I guess this will be, we're not outing you as a bad person, what is the craziest lie you've ever told to get out of a date or end, you know, something? And you can look further back, I'm sure. We all grow and mature over years. What is kind of what has been your get out of jail card for dating?
Yeah, this is definitely not great, but I definitely have used the I'm meeting up with like my cousin, or meeting up with like a family member before, or things of that nature. And or I don't use the sick relative one, because personally I don't want to like jinx myself and actually have that relative get sick. But like I've definitely used the, oh, my dog isn't feeling well, or things of that nature, which most of the time it is true. However, it's kind of like I could like, you know, continue the date. I just choose no longer to continue the date, and whether or not I have like other plans afterwards, or even like I've, you know, done like 2 dates in a day type thing, which I honestly don't recommend, because that just drains your social battery unless you're just like
that's
down
bold
for it.
too. Like
it's tough, but yeah.
How do you feel about the marathon first date? If you know what I'm talking about, that's you start a date, you maybe intend it to be, the regular date, 2 hours or something, and then you and that person are feeling it, and you continue on with the day or the night. How do you feel about those?
I'm like, if the connection and vibe is really strong and it's there, like, I'm a fan. I actually had one of those a couple months back. We had gone just to get like wine and some dinner. It was like it was like one of those small like plate type restaurants, and we had gone on that day, and I was like, well, I told her from the beginning I had my friend's birthday party, and she was like, hey, like, can I come? And she was like, I'm really having a great time tonight. I know your friend's birthday party. Would you mind if I come? And I said, absolutely, like, come on. So we went to that, hung out there at that bar for like 2 or 3 hours for the birthday, and then afterwards, like, she even came home. We watched some Disney Plus, some Netflix, and then she called an Uber and went home. And we, continue to go on like dates from there. So yeah, it can work.
Awesome. No, like I feel like the marathon first date can be like a double-edged sword. Sometimes you get like, they can be great and a great way to get to know somebody, but sometimes it's like, you need to like be able to go home and have a good night's sleep after a date and think about it the next day, even if you had a great time. Like, that's just my opinion, because sometimes there's a date high that you get, like and I think that's why a lot of times people say some things they don't mean, like, we should totally do this, and then the next day they ghost you. It's like, what? It seemed like they wanted to keep hanging out. Like, it seemed like they were so excited. Like, I really think like that's why I'm a big fan of no Saturday first dates. Like, have it on a weekday night, because it's a school night, so it kind of can help you from like getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, for me, it's like bizarre. Like, kind of, you have your like no Saturday first date rule. For some reason, I don't like going on dates on Sundays. Like, past like 4 o'clock, I feel like on a Sunday, like, I'm just I want to be at home or like maybe run my little errands, go to the grocery, do some laundry, and just kind of like to chill and just get ready for the week mentally. And especially during like football season, I've vehemently like written off Sunday dates exclusively. If we're not going to get like Starbucks or brunch that like ends by the 1 o'clock window of games, to go back east, like, we are not going out. 'Cause I'm watching football from 1 p.m. until the last minute of Sunday night football. Usually around like midnight, I'm going to bed. So that's not happening.
No, that totally makes sense. I never liked Sunday dates either. Like, Sunday, I get the scaries and whatnot. Like, it's just, I feel like I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like, Monday's coming up. But yeah, like, I'm not really a fan, but I do think like brunch counts. I think Sunday is great when you have been dating somebody for a little bit, and it's like you're more comfortable with each other. Like, maybe you had a good Saturday, and it's like, let's go grab some brunch kind of thing.
Yeah, like, I feel like brunch is like really, great, phenomenal. You get to like the bottomless, you get to like talk, chill. It's like good energy, good vibes. But for me, like I was saying, during football season, it's kind of like that is like my primary focus, and that's not fair to the person you're on a date with. If you're essentially watching the TV and they're like trying to like make conversation, get to know you, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, so sorry. It's like, come on now. Like, if you've been dating somebody exclusively for hella long and they're like into football like you are, or you have that like a strong established connection, then of course you can meet up, get a bite, watch the game, but you have to like kind of make it to that point first. You can't like start there.
Totally. And so football season's a few months away. But one thing that I noticed, and I think I see it more on Saturdays in Austin, when the Longhorns play. Yeah. How have you ever met somebody kind of over watching football? Like, if you're out at a bar or anything like that, or think like ways like that where kind of that's brought you together with some cool people, or any thoughts on that?
In terms of like going to like watch parties and things?
Like watch parties, or going to a specific bar. That's in Austin here, we have some that are dedicated to a specific team. Where people will go and watch their team at a certain bar, or they'll have watch parties or themed days and whatnot. And it's a great place to like meet people and bring people together. Like, I think also like jerseys start conversations. Like, even if it's someone who's the opposing team, just like saying like, oh hey, like, look at like your team lost, haha, and it still starts a conversation that's fun. Like, I love that time of year.
Yeah, I definitely think for sure, depending on like the region and stuff, that thing could be like a really great thing to connect people. Like, I know like the Longhorns, their fan base in the DC area probably isn't as large as like the other schools in their alumni base, but like I know Penn State, for example, has a like monstrous presence in the DC area. There's a lot of Penn State grads that are almost like freaking everywhere, and they have like 4 or 5 kind of like Penn State themed bars that I've gone to watch some games with friends, and they always like are meeting people that they didn't even know, like obviously went to Penn State, and like they've gone out on dates with different girls that they've met like at the watch parties, and guys that they've met, and vice versa. And it's kind of like, hey, it's a great way to connect. Do you have that common shared interest? And Yeah, like people will be walking around and see like somebody wearing like a Penn State hat or a Penn State t-shirt, and they'll be like, "We are," and then they always respond like Penn State, and then from there you just like strike up convo and just go from there.
Totally. And I think that's so cool because obviously Longhorns are huge here in Austin, Texas. But I have friends who went to University of Georgia, and those guys know how to party. Like I've been to some. It's over at Greenlight Social. They would do, two close friends went to University of Georgia, and it is rowdy over there. But it's a great way to meet people, especially if you're like the lesser known team in the city and whatnot. So if you're like moving to a big city, like find out what like bars your teams play at. And it's a great way to like meet like-minded people for sure. Yeah,
and like that SEC life is a lot different. So I know Texas is going to join them in the next year. I think 2024 is when it kicks in. So that would be like fantastic, especially when like Bama and Georgia and Florida and LSU, like the big dogs, like come to town, and they go vice versa. Strong fan bases, like great opportunity to meet a lot of people and just enjoy yourselves and watch some good football.
Totally. Yeah, I love like sports bring people together. I think it's a great way to meet people. I think it's a good way to get off the apps in an organic environment where you've got an excuse to talk to people.
And
like
tailgate and all that, like just naturally just like bumping into people, like camaraderie, some good vibes, and it's just like, like it's a great time.
Exactly. Like by default, you're surrounded by like-minded people. You've got something to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was my next question? I'm totally thinking.
Whoa.
Do you have any questions or any thoughts you want to share on dating topics?
Yeah, so since you've been able to start your platform, welcome to the Peasant Party. How has dating impacted you? I know you're not on the apps, but have people approached you out in public or tried to ask you out or things of that nature because they've seen your presence on the internet?
Yeah, so I think that, and I think you'll have interesting answers to this question. I think you'll when I turn it back to you, you'll have some interesting responses as well. So, I met my significant other through TikTok because of my presence. Probably 4 months now. But Buddy is awesome, and I think really that kind of started because making TikTok content. I think I came across one of his videos. It was like how to make homemade ranch, and it was like really funny. And I think I followed back or something. And then, as time kind of went on, I like love like EDM, like was following this one like artist, and then opened the comment section. I saw he'd left a comment, and I was like, oh my goodness, like this guy likes, the guy, the funny ranch guy, like likes this same artist. And so I went and I think I followed on Instagram, and things kind of like moved from there. But so it brought me to somebody. But kind of before that though, it kind of had an interesting impact. I know when I first started, probably about a year ago today, doing TikTok content, I was very much like, if I talk about my personal life, like I didn't want to do that on TikTok. Like I think I'd seen West Elm Caleb from the sidelines.
Oh yeah.
I'd seen kind of, people that maybe talked about their dating life, and then, 2 weeks later, the guy would break up with them because he was a focal point in a story and he thought it was weird. I also just pictured my close, like people maybe that aren't necessarily my friends that know of me, maybe sharing videos in group chats and, calling them cringy and stuff. So I was very much like, I don't want to talk about my personal life. I'll talk about dating topics. So I always kept that a little bit removed. But even then, like just having like a public personality like that, especially one that like talks about dating, like it raises red flags in some people, I think, for sure. And I mean, that's the right. Like I think, and I did a survey of people's preferences with dating around people's jobs. Like there were people that would write in like, I'll never date a nurse again, or I don't date cops, things like that. Like I think people have a right to say, no, and maybe not understand, the full scope of what I do. But I had one, it was like early summer of last year. I had one ghosting that was kind of odd, and I think he came across the TikTok profile for sure and just ran for the hills. But dealt with definitely like a little bit of that, and I wasn't on dating apps and whatnot. Like, so all the people I would meet was kind of like through friends. So I would bring up the TikTok thing like kind of early.
Yeah.
So that if it was some sort of deal breaker, they could leave before I started to like them, basically. So that was something. And then I think so every now and then I would get like DMs and whatnot from people. And for me, that was just kind of challenging because a lot of times like there's all this information about me out there in the world, and it would be somebody from like a private profile just saying hi. And it was kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Like, kind of have to announce yourself. Like, so a little bit of that, and those I would just kind of ignore because it was just like, I don't want to, be in this conversation with a person that I have no idea what they want, and you can't really like back out of it. So yeah, it kind of affected it in a multitude of ways in that way. How has it for you?
Definitely some similarities there for sure. I know initially when I first like kind of like started creating content, I'd have people kind of like message me all the time, and it's it's definitely like flattering, and it makes you kind of like feel good about yourself that people like support your content. Not only that, and then of course they might be interested in you romantically, based on like you making yourself essentially vulnerable to the internet and sharing your opinions and things of that nature. But I kind of found it to be like really underwhelming because essentially they're like really far. And like living in like Virginia, the DC area, and having somebody reaching out to you from like Montana or like Idaho, whatever insert state here, it's kind of like, all right, well, I don't plan on like moving to that area because my career is here, and vice versa. It's kind of like, I will like, I mean, what's going to really happen is going to be a pen pal. And I know I've had situations where people might recognize me on the platforms, whether it's on like the dating app, they'll be like, oh, you that guy like from, and I'm like, yeah. Or vice versa in like real life, and then they kind of like expect you to be like perfect because it's almost like people feel like they've developed that like relationship with you because of social media, and they think they know you, and it's kind of like, no, like you're like a flawed person, like just like me, and vice versa. And it kind of makes them kind of like almost angry in a way, because it's kind of like the whole like never meet your heroes type thing, when people kind of like have this viewpoint and they put you on this pedestal in a way, and then when they meet you, it's kind of like disappointing. So a lot of people are kind of like angry at that, and they might even feel like kind of like they're lied to. And there's definitely been situations where people have chosen not to go out on dates with me because I have an online presence, even though I don't really talk about my dates. I did initially. I tried to do like little series, but I realized it was not going to go anywhere, so I kind of like stopped it in probably November of 2021. But people will still say, hey, I don't feel comfortable going out with somebody who has an online presence, because they might think I'm dating them for content, or they might think that I am going to like tell stories about them and things of that nature, when that's not the case. So I guess different strokes for different folks.
Totally. Yeah, the parasocial relationships are pretty real there, where it's just someone, there's hours and hours of content out there of you talking to the camera, especially just because like with TikTok and whatnot, like back in the day with like celebrities, they played a character. Now it's like you have people that are
Everyday
using
people.
Like influencers, like who have kind of really reached celebrity status. Like people feel like they know them. It's just it's really interesting that way.
Yeah, and a lot of the time people don't even realize like sometimes these influencers are playing essentially characters.
Oh, absolutely.
And they'll like troll people, or they'll be, portraying themselves in one way, and then in real life, their everyday life with their friends, their family, they're just a completely different person. And some people kind of have that hard time differentiating like the two.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like we live in an interesting world with social media and how it's affected dating.
Oh, yeah.
What about, so not dating apps, but using the Instagram DM slide to meet people or find dates? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I definitely did like earlier, definitely a few years back. I really haven't really done it as much as of late. Now, if somebody and I match on like a dating app and they have their handle and their thing, or vice versa, I've done that. Like I added them, or they'll add me, and vice versa, and then we'll connect there, versus like discussing like the apps. I mean, discussing things on the app. But in terms of just like cold calling somebody essentially on Instagram, no, I don't really do that anymore. No.
Yeah. I would used to, and I think like before TikTok, it was kind of like, well, how did this person find me? Like, and I would look, sometimes they wouldn't have like any mutual friends. I'm like, did you click on the geotag? Because of course people like to start their DM slides with just saying hi. It's like, if I don't know you, you can't just say hi or how are you or something like that.
It's like, state your reason.
Yes, I'm a firm believer that if you are doing the Instagram DM slide with a total stranger, you need to A, have a public profile. You need to B, announce yourself and how you got there, and then what you want.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of value there. It's definitely it's definitely important to be like upfront and honest. Like, why are you here? Like, because ultimately, like, people will message you from like user 88121212, and like maybe it could be damn Brad Pitt on the other side of it. It could be like the most attractive man you've ever seen, or like the best baddie, or like a hot woman like ever. But like if you're just looking at a faceless profile that's probably gonna get stuck in your request, people are not really going to be that likely to respond. Or a lot of people will do the like 3 or 4 photos and maybe, get their attention that way. And then it's kind of like, all right, like I see the game here.
The window tap is what I call that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I did notice like they would always have a profile picture. And it was clearly a profile, but it was private. So you can't see it. And I really do think like if you are going to message somebody DM, they need to be able to check out the profile without looking like an asshole. Like the second they follow back, it's like, and they don't message you, they've seen it. And like you kind of have to give that person the out because no one wants to be an asshole.
Yeah, you should definitely give them the available information they need in order to like kind of make their decision. People are going to check out some pictures, get like a baseline surface level kind of like idea of who you are, like what you're into, what's your vibe, and then from there they can, I guess, decide if they want to pursue or not. But if you don't give them much to work with, it might not always work out in your favor.
Exactly. Kind of like how a dating app, everyone has equal information clause is what I'll call it. You have the same amount of information about them that they have about you. I think the same should go for Instagram DM slides.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you brought up because I know for that it's kind of like everyone I know like on Hinge can only do 5 or 6 pictures and 3 prompts and maybe like a video or something, a voice note. But like there's definitely a huge discrepancy in terms of what like women will put on their profiles versus what men will put, because I've noticed women are much more likely to be very detailed and very thorough in terms of their prompts and their like green flags and maybe red flags and TV shows, hobbies, X, Y, and Z. Whereas like a lot of like my like guy friends will like kind of be chatting and they'll have like 1 or 2 sentences and like they're like prompt and they're like, all right, well, whatever. Like I'll meet them when I meet them. And women's like profiles are like a 50-page book and the guys are like maybe like a hotel like brochure or something.
Exactly. That's what I've been told is just women's dating profiles. It's too many words. Too many words, or it's like, I want a guy who makes a plan and goes to a restaurant, makes reservations. And I think that's why a lot of guys will write, I'm looking for someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously, because they look on there, they're like, this is scary.
Yeah. I love the whole, like the best way to ask me out is to ask. And like, it's like funny because I'm sure like those people actually do get the messages from like the dudes who like really don't kind of care. And they're like, all right, so like, what are you doing next Thursday? And it's like, they just never respond. And it's kind of like, didn't you tell them to ask you out? And
exactly.
It's kind of like, I feel like people just kind of like copy paste like with some of their prompts and their answers. And it's kind of like, it's just like a game at this point.
Oh, totally. And I one thing I've learned, it's like everyone's profiles are the same, and no one really gets together and says, oh, our profiles are going to look like this. It's just what people think the person they're reaching out to wants versus what they actually want. I think there's kind of some discrepancy there, because I always thought like guy dating app profiles looked like they were trying to rush a frat. It was like, you look like you're trying to make some friends. It's like, no, think of what women like. It's like they'll do like, a lot of times guys will have like they would have the the crazy story prompt or a crazy travel story, and then they tell a story about how they got mugged. I don't like, cool, I'm not going to be safe with you. Or like, oh yeah, like, got into, business with like the mob when I was studying abroad. Like, okay, cool, that's kind of scary. Like, and it's like, yeah, that's a great story to tell other dudes. But like for women who are like concerned about safety, like maybe choose something else. Yeah,
definitely. I feel like a lot of people kind of take kind of like the prompts like really literally, and they're supposed to be like kind of fun. And I know for me, like personally on my page, it's like things I go crazy for, and I'll be like, oh, like all things London related, I love that city, or golden retrievers, I have a golden, or like maybe like my favorite TV shows, so things people, if they feel the same, or they're really into like Disney Channel original movies or DComs, like, oh, like I get that a lot. Oh, like what's your favorite DCom, or what are your top 5? And it's like an instant like conversation starter, and like it's just like it's off to the races, and you can just like talk, and then eventually it's like, hey, like would you like to go get drinks sometime, or discuss like whatever, and maybe one day down the line, once we know each other, maybe we can do a Disney movie and like get dinner, and they're like down.
I love that. And that also brings in a lot of what I call like show not tell, because so many people in their dating apps, what are you looking for? Trust, caring, kind. We all want that. Yes. Nobody doesn't want that.
It's like, I want an asshole who's going to cheat on me, who's going to manipulate me, gaslight me, steal my money. It's like, who like, is anyone actually ever looking for that? Or does it just happen?
Exactly. Or it's like, I want someone who brings me peace. What does peace look like to you? Like, I think, for some people, like, I don't, like, my boyfriend, for example, likes a lot of, like, stand-up comedy, like, very, like, niche comedians and stuff. Like, maybe peace for him is like, oh, like, I have interest in that, too, and I don't say, oh, that's weird, change the channel or something like that. Like, say, like, show, not tell. Like, yeah, like you said, like, Disney like Disney Channel original movies versus saying like, oh, like, I love to just, chill and watch TV on the couch, like that kind of thing.
It's like, what are you watching? Oh,
exactly.
Shows. What shows? Okay. Like, let's get to the bases here and like give people something to work with,
Totally. How many pictures is your lovely golden retriever Charlie in your profile?
Oh God. Let me see. About to pull this out. Not many.
What's the percentage of time that is the picture people swipe on?
Almost 99.5%, 99.9. I would even say higher than that, 99.5. Young Mr. Charlie is in 2.
Nice.
My first, because it was the first picture we took the day I brought him home. And the second picture is the day he passed from puppy training school, which was my former profile picture and essentially the best day of my life because we worked hard to get him there.
That is a great picture.
Says, God.
Women love golden retrievers.
Yeah. I it's funny though. I actually will get like a lot of matches and they'll be like, oh, what's his name? Even though it's in my profile, it does say Charlie. And they'll be like, oh, well, like, what's his name? I'll respond Charlie. And then like the conversation is just like done. So it's kind of like, all right, well, maybe I'll make Charlie a dating profile if you guys like just want to like date Charlie. Like, I'm not that bad of a person myself, I promise you.
Nice. And how soon do they meet Charlie?
Usually, oh, goodness, a lot of probably the 3rd, 4th date.
Makes sense.
Because Charlie, he's like a really socially like anxious dog, so he doesn't really enjoy like restaurants too much because it's just like so much going on and things of that nature. I've brought him out on like 1 or 2 first dates where we've gone to like a park or done like a little picnic, and so he's able to like play with his toys and run around and like have fun. But a lot of people, in terms of meeting him, usually that won't be until like they come over for the first time, whenever that happens.
Nice. And wow, that flew by.
We
are up on time, and I think since Owen is in Austin for a trip, I think we're probably going to go and enjoy ourselves down here on East 6th Street. Can't wait. Can't recommend it enough. If you ever visit Austin, and I'm so excited to be posting this. We'll be pulling some clips, putting them onto TikTok, and stay tuned for the next episode. We'll probably going to keep a similar format, but listener feedback is so appreciated because I want to make a show that people like and want to listen to and brings value. So
absolutely.
Thank you for listening if you've gotten this far. And thank you, Owen, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to enjoying a beautiful Austin, Texas, and can't wait to have some fun.
Love it. Let's go get a beer. Thanks, everyone. Over and out.